Welcome to Really Strange. Today we'll be delving into the true story behind the Amityville Horror, a story that has both captivated and horrified audiences around the world for decades. A chilling story of a haunted house, gruesome murders, and a family terrorized by malevolent forces. We will explore the history of the Amityville house, the tragic events that took place within its walls, the harrowing experiences of the Lutz family, and the involvement of the renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Our story starts in the heart of Amityville, a charming village nestled on the south shore of Long Island, New York. Here, a quaint Dutch colonial house stands, its unique eye-like windows gazing out onto the quiet suburban street. But don't let that tranquil exterior fool you. This is no ordinary home. This is the infamous Amityville Horror House. The house's architectural style is a classic representation of early 20th century design, with its gambrel roof, symmetrical window placement, and even a stately chimney. The house stands 3 stories high, including a finished basement, and features a boathouse as it overlooks the Amityville River. To an onlooker, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue is the picture of American suburbia. The lawn perfectly manicured, the white picket fence, a symbol of the American dream, and the picturesque setting close to the water only adds to the aura of peace and tranquility. It's a house that many would aspire to live in. It is a dream home, a dream that for some became the darkest of nightmares. This house, with its charming exterior, holds secrets that would send a chill down the spine of even the bravest. The walls of this house have witnessed horrors that have inspired countless books, documentaries and films, making it one of the most infamous haunted houses not just in America, but the entire world. The story of the Amityville Horror House is one of mystery, terror and intrigue, a story that once you've heard you'll never forget. Our journey into the past takes us back to the year 1924, when the house was first erected. The original owners, the Monahan family, commissioned a local architect to design the house. The architectural design chosen was Dutch colonial style, popular in the northeastern United States at the time. The Monahans, like any other family, had dreams of a peaceful and prosperous life in their new home. The house, with its spacious rooms, a large boathouse, and a beautiful view of the Amityville River, was a perfect place for them to raise their children and create treasured memories. In those early years, the house was filled with laughter, joy, and the typical ups and downs of family life. There was no indication of the darkness that was to come. For the next 4 decades, the house saw several owners, each with their own stories and experiences, but none reported anything out of the ordinary. It was just another beautiful house on Ocean Avenue, a part of the quiet suburban life in Amityville. The community was friendly, and the neighbourhood was considered a safe and desirable place to live. However, the tranquility of the house and its picturesque neighbourhood would be shattered in the mid-1970s. The house would go from being a symbol of the American dream to the centre of a nightmarish tale that would captivate the world. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue was about to become the Amityville Horror House. The shift began in 1965, when a new family moved in, the Defoes. They were a typical middle-class family looking for a fresh start in a new home. Little did they know, their move would set off a chain of events that would forever mark the house as a place of unspeakable horror. In 1965, the Defoe family, captivated by the charm of the house at 112 Ocean Avenue, decided to make it their home. The family consisted of the father, Ronald Defoe Sr., the mother, Louise Defoe, and their 5 children, Dawn, Allison, Mark, John, and the eldest, Ronald Defoe Jr., also known as Butch. The Defoes seemed like any other family pursuing the American dream. Ronald Sr. was a successful car salesman, Louise was a dedicated homemaker, and all the children were enrolled in the local school. For a while, life was ordinary and peaceful, filled with the common ups and downs of a family of 7. However, beneath the veneer of normality, there were strains. Butch Defoe, in particular, was known to have a volatile relationship with his father. There were arguments, disagreements, and family tensions, but nothing that suggested the impending tragedy. Then, in the early hours of November 13, 1974, an unimaginable horror unfolded within the walls of the house. Butch Defoe, aged just 23, systematically murdered his entire family in their beds. Armed with a .35 caliber Marlin rifle, he moved from room to room, ending the lives of his parents and siblings. Each family member was found face down in their beds, with no signs of a struggle. The most chilling aspect of this gruesome murderous event was the lack of a reaction from the victims. Forensic evidence suggested that none of the family members attempted to escape or even move from their beds despite the loud gunshots. There was also no evidence of sedatives in their system, deepening the mystery of the massacre. The following day, Butch Defoe calmly walked into a local bar and announced that his family had been murdered, setting off a chain of events that would forever mar the history of the house at 112 Ocean Avenue. The Defoe family murders sent shockwaves through the Amityville community, a quiet neighbourhood unaccustomed to such violent crimes. The gruesome murders marked the end of the house's period of normalcy, turning it into a location of morbid fascination and dark speculation. The stage was set for the house's transition into the infamous Amityville Horror House. In the aftermath of the Defoe murders, the focus shifted to the seemingly incomprehensible act committed by Butch Defoe. A cloud of disbelief and shock hung over the community. The question on everyone's mind was, why would a son and brother commit such a heinous act against his own family? Butch Defoe was arrested and charged with the murders of his family. His trial began on October 14, 1975, almost a year after the killings. The courtroom was filled with a tense anticipation as the residents of Amityville and the world beyond waited to hear Defoe's defense. Defoe's defense lawyer, William Weber, opted for a strategy that was as shocking as the crime itself. He pleaded insanity on behalf of Defoe, arguing that his client had killed his family under the influence of a compelling voice that he could not resist. It was a voice that Defoe claimed originated from within the house. Butch Defoe took the stand and gave his chilling account. He claimed he heard voices that grew louder and more insistent over time. Voices that tormented him, manipulated him, and ultimately compelled him to commit the unspeakable act. Defoe's defense painted a picture of a man driven to the edge of his sanity by an unseen force within his own home. As the trial progressed, Defoe's claims sparked speculation and fear. Could it be possible that an ordinary house in a quiet neighbourhood harboured a malevolent entity powerful enough to instigate such a horrific crime? Despite Defoe's chilling claims and the insanity plea, the jury was not convinced. After a lengthy and tense trial, they found Ronald Butch Defoe Jr. guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences. The trial of Butch Defoe added another layer of infamy to the house at 112 Ocean Avenue. The tales of voices and unseen forces suggested that the house was not just the site of a gruesome crime, but perhaps the source of it. The stage was now set for the house's transformation from a murder scene to an alleged site of supernatural phenomena. After the Defoe tragedy, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue sat vacant for over a year. Its grim history and the chilling claims made by Butch Defoe had seemingly tainted its once charming facade. However, in December 1975, a new family saw past the house's dark history and decided to make it their home. This family was the Lutzes. George and Kathy Lutz, along with Kathy's 3 children from a previous marriage, Daniel, Christopher and Missy, were excited to start a new life in what seemed like the perfect family home. The Dutch colonial, despite its past, was a dream house. It was spacious, located near the water, and surprisingly affordable. For a mere $80,000, the Lutzes were able to purchase the property, including all the furniture left behind by the Defoes. The Lutzes were not ignorant to the house's grim past. They knew all about the Defoe family's tragic end. However, they were a pragmatic family and didn't allow the house's history to deter them from what they considered an excellent deal. After all, They didn't believe in ghosts or hauntings. Upon moving in, the Lutzes decided to have the house blessed by a Catholic priest, Father Ralph Pacorio. It was a routine act, not fueled by fear or superstition, but a common practice among many families when moving into a new home. The Lutzes hoped to leave the house's dark past behind and make it a happy home. However, they soon found that their dream home was not the haven they had imagined. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue had other plans. As days turned into weeks, a creeping unease began to settle within the Lutzes family. Their life in the Amityville house was about to turn into a living nightmare, giving rise to one of the most well-known haunted house stories in history. The Lutz family moved into the Amityville house on December 18, 1975, filled with hope and anticipation for their new life. However, the idyllic family home they had imagined began to show a much darker side almost immediately. From the very first day, the Lutzes reported strange occurrences, cold spots in certain areas of the house, unexplained odours, and a general sense of unease seemed to permeate the building. But it was the swarm of flies that first truly unnerved the family. Despite it being the middle of winter, flies would appear in certain rooms, particularly in the sewing room, a phenomenon that seemed to defy natural explanation. As days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences began to escalate. George Lutz reported waking up at 3:15 a.m. every night, the same time that Butch Defoe had carried out his dreadful act. He also developed an unhealthy obsession with the house's fireplace, constantly feeling cold despite the roaring fires he would build. Kathy Lutz, on the other hand, began to have terrifying nightmares, many of which revolved around the murders of the Defoe family. She also reported feeling unseen hands touching her, and even discovered mysterious red welts on her chest that would appear and disappear without cause. The Lutz's children also experienced their share of the paranormal activity. Their daughter Missy, who was just 5 at the time, claimed to have an imaginary friend, a demonic pig-like creature with glowing red eyes that she named Jody. She insisted Jody was real and would often be seen talking to an unseen presence. Even the family dog wasn't spared. It acted strangely, and on more than one occasion was found whining and trembling without any apparent reason. The house seemed to be exerting a negative influence on the family. George Lutz's personality began to change. He grew distant, prone to mood swings, and his health began to decline. The once happy and optimistic family was now living in fear and confusion. Their dream home had become a source of terror and anxiety. Despite the growing fear, the Lutzes, being rational and practical individuals, tried to find logical explanations for the strange occurrences. But as the intensity and frequency of the incidents increased, it became harder to deny that something was seriously wrong with their house. The Lutzes were living in a haunted house. As the strange occurrences escalated, the Lutzes turned to the Catholic Church for help. They contacted Father Ralph Pacorio, the priest who had initially blessed the house when they moved in. They hoped that a religious intervention might bring some relief, or at least some answers. Father Pacorio agreed to visit the house. The Lutzes had hoped that his presence might alleviate the unease that had taken a hold of their home. However, what the priest experienced would only serve to deepen the sense of dread surrounding the house. During his visit, Father Pacorio reported feeling a chilling sensation the moment he stepped into the house. As he moved from room to room, sprinkling holy water and reciting prayers, he claimed to have heard a deep, masculine voice ordering him to get out. Perhaps the most disturbing experience occurred when Father Pacorio entered the second-floor bedroom that had once belonged to Mark and John Defoe. As he began his blessings, he felt a slap on his face, powerful and unseen. There was no one in the room with him. After this chilling encounter, Father Pacorio fell ill. He developed a high fever and his hands started to bleed, a condition resembling stigmata, wounds resembling those of Christ's crucifixion. Many believe this was a result of his encounter with the malevolent force present in the house. Father Pacario's experience confirmed the Lutz's worst fear. Their home was not just a house with a violent past, it was by all accounts a house inhabited by evil force. Despite the priest's efforts, the haunted did not cease. In fact, the paranormal activity seemed to intensify. pushing the Lutz family to their breaking point. They needed more help. It was at this point that renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren were brought in to examine the house. Known for their work on high-profile cases like the Perron family haunting and the Annabelle doll, the Warrens were experienced and respected in the field of paranormal research. The Warrens arrived at the Amityville house in early 1976, accompanied by a crew from a local TV station and several reporters. They were there to investigate the house, hoping to gather evidence of the alleged paranormal activity and perhaps even identify its source. Lorraine, a self-professed clairvoyant, reported feeling an overwhelming sense of demonic presence the moment she entered the house. She described it as one of the most terrifying experiences of her career, an evil force so potent that it was almost unbearable. Ed Warren, too, claimed to have experienced strange phenomena in the house. He reported feeling a drop in temperature and a sense of pressure on his heart. He also saw a shadowy figure moving into the dark. During their investigation, the Warrens conducted a séance in an attempt to communicate with the spirits supposedly haunting the house. The session was intense and reportedly ended with Lorraine being thrown a distance of 20 feet. On their initial visit, the Warrens concluded that the house was infested with demonic entities. They believed that these entities were feeding off the fear and tension within the family, causing the haunting to escalate. Following their initial visit, Ed and Lorraine Warren launched a full investigation into the Amityville house. The goal was to gather tangible evidence to support the Lutz's claim and their own initial findings. The Warrens, accompanied by a research team, returned to the house with an array of equipment designed to capture physical proof of the supernatural. During their investigation, the Warrens used a variety of methods to try and communicate with the alleged entities in the house. This included EVP, electronic voice phenomena recordings, spirit photography, and further seances. Their efforts led to some chilling discoveries. One of the most famous pieces of evidence to come out of the Warrens' investigation is a photograph taken by an automatic camera that was set up to shoot infrared film throughout the night. The picture appears to show a young boy with white eyes peering out of a doorway. Some speculate that this might be the spirit of John Defoe, one of the children tragically killed in the house. Additionally, the Warrens captured multiple EVPs during their investigation. These recordings included what sounded like voices, unexplained banging sounds, and even growls. Lorraine also claimed to have made contact with the spirits of the Defoe family during a séance, further adding to the disturbing nature of their findings. Despite the significant amount of evidence the Warrens claimed to have gathered, their investigation was met with skepticism. Critics argued that the evidence could be easily faked and pointed out the inconsistencies in the Lutz's story. Despite this, the Warrens remained firm in their conclusion. The house of 112 Ocean Avenue was haunted. The Warrens' investigation did little to alleviate the troubles plaguing the Lutz family. If anything, the hauntings seemed to intensify in the aftermath. The family was at their wits' end, and it was becoming increasingly clear that they could not continue to live in the house. With the haunting showing no sign of stopping, and the lives of the Lutz family in a state of constant turmoil, many began to speculate on what could be causing such intense paranormal activity. Various theories have been proposed over the years, each with its own implications. The most obvious theory pointed to the brutal murders that took place in the house. The violent deaths of the Defoe family could have left a psychic imprint on the house, causing it to replay the traumatic events. In the realm of the paranormal, such places are often referred to as haunted due to their history of violence or tragedy. Another theory suggested that the house was built on an ancient burial ground, and the spirits of those buried there were disturbed and agitated. This theory was fueled by the fact that the town of Amityville was once inhabited by the Native American Montauk tribe. Although there's no concrete evidence to suggest that the house was indeed built on such a site, the Warrens, however, proposed a more chilling theory. They believed that the house was infested with demonic entities. According to them, these entities were not the spirits of the deceased, but malevolent forces that fed on the fear and discord within the Lutz family. Yet another theory suggested that the haunting was a result of a thought form, or a tulpa, a physical manifestation of the collective fear and anxiety experienced by the Lutzes. According to this theory, the family's fear of the house's violent past and their anxiety about the strange occurrences could have manifested into actual paranormal activity. Each theory provides its own explanation for the Amityville haunting, and yet none can be definitively proven. The truth, it seems, remains shrouded in a mystery and speculation. Despite the Warrens' investigation and Father Piccario's blessings, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue seemed to be gripped by an evil force that refused to let go. The Lutzes were living in constant fear, their lives in turmoil. The dream home they had moved into just a few weeks ago had become a living nightmare. Each day brought with it new terrors, leaving the family on edge. George Lutz's personality changes became more pronounced. He lost weight rapidly, his temper became short, and he began to look like a different person altogether. Kathy Lutz continued to have nightmares and felt an uneasy presence touching her. The children were not spared either, with Mrs. imaginary friend Jodie becoming a more frequent visitor. The house itself seemed to come alive with paranormal activity after attempts were made to rid it of the evil presence. Doors would slam shut on their own, windows would open and close, and the stench of decay would permeate the rooms without warning. George Lutz even reported seeing a cloven-hooved figure outside the house on one occasion. One particularly chilling incident occurred when George woke up to Kathy levitating off their bed. On another occasion, Kathy was seen transforming into an old hag, her face wrinkled and her hair wild. These incidents were the tipping point for the Lutzes. They could no longer deny that they were living in a house that was not just haunted, but possibly possessed by a malevolent force. Pushed to their limits, the Lutzes made a decision that would put an end to their ordeal, but would continue to haunt them for the rest of their lives. As January 1976 drew to a close, the Lutzes reached their breaking point. The paranormal activity had become unbearable, the fear all-consuming. They had endured the inexplicable for weeks, but the final night in the Amityville house was the most terrifying of all. The family has never given a full account of what occurred on that night, stating only that it was too frightening to recall in detail. They've hinted at a series of horrifying experiences, a culmination of the paranormal phenomena that they have been experiencing since they moved in. The details remain shrouded in mystery, but what we do know is this. On the night of January 14, 1976, the Lutzes fled the Amityville house. They left behind their belongings, taking only a few clothes with them. They never returned. The Lutzes' departure was abrupt and shocking. Their neighbours watched in confusion as the family left their home in the dead of the night, looking terrified and worn. The family that had moved in with such joy and hope and a little over a month ago was now fleeing in terror. The nightmare was over for the Lutzes, but the story of the Amityville house was far from finished. Their experiences would go on to spark a media frenzy, turning the house at 112 Ocean Avenue into a symbol of haunted America. After the Lutzes' dramatic departure, the Amityville house was subjected to the usual scrutiny. Many skeptics discredited the haunting as a clever hoax, while others firmly believed in the family's account. The house was sold and resold multiple times, with subsequent owners reporting no supernatural occurrences. The Lutz family never returned to the Amityville house. They stood by their story until the end, despite the controversy and skepticism that surrounded it. Their experience in the house had been the subject of numerous books, documentaries and films, forever cementing the Amityville house as an icon of horror. There you have it, the disturbing true story of the Amityville horror house and the Lutz family's struggle with the darkness. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.